All right, let's talk about a term you might have heard whispered around in trading circles, the C-book. It sounds pretty official, maybe even a little mysterious, right? Like some kind of insider secret. Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain. We're going to break down what it really is, and more importantly, how it can affect your trades and, yeah, your money.
So, have you actually come across this term? It sounds so formal, doesn't it? Like, of course, there's an A book and a B book, so there must be a C book, where a whole different set of rules applies. It's often talked about as this advanced, kind of hybrid model for handling trades. But is that the real story?
The short answer is not really. The term C-book isn't some distinct third category. For the most part, it's just marketing speak. It's a catch-all phrase for a bunch of different hybrid strategies that brokers use to manage their risk and, let's be honest, boost their own profits.
So, to really get what these so called C book strategies are all about, we've got to go back to the basics. It all starts with the two fundamental ways a brokerage can execute your trades: the A book and the B book. Pretty much everything else is just a creative mix of these two.
First up, we've got the A-book. Now, think of this as the classic middleman model. It's pretty straightforward. You place a trade, and your broker just acts as an agent, passing it straight through to the bigger market, to a liquidity provider. Their own risk is super low here, and they make their money from a clear commission or a small markup on the spread. It doesn't matter to them if you win or lose.
And then there's the B book. And this is a whole different ballgame. In this model, the broker doesn't pass your trade on at all. Nope. They basically become the casino. They take the other side of your position. So if you're buying, they're the ones selling to you. This means if you win, they lose. And that's the key. Their profit is your loss. A massive conflict of interest is just built right into the model.
So let's just put them right next to each other to make it super clear. With A-book, the broker has low risk, and they get paid from fees. They're just an agent. With B-book, the risk is way higher. I mean, they could lose a ton of money if their clients are winning, but the potential profit is also much bigger since it comes from client losses. They're literally the house. Getting this difference is absolutely crucial for everything that comes next.
Okay, so now that we've got those building blocks down, let's dive into the first real C-book strategy. This is probably the most common one, and it's really just a smart mix of the two models we just talked about. It's called the partial hedge. And it is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of going all in on A book or all in on B book, the broker does a bit of both. They hedge just a piece of your trade with a liquidity provider, but they keep the rest of it on their own books, basically B-booking it.
Let's walk through an example to see how this works. Imagine our trader, we'll call her Elsa, has a great trade and makes a $10,000 profit. Her broker decided to hedge 50% of that trade. So that means the broker covered half of her winnings with their own offsetting trade in the market. But what about the other half? Well, that comes straight out of the broker's pocket.
So what's the bottom line for the broker in this case? After you factor in a small profit they made on the hedged part, they end up with a net loss of $4,900. Now, yeah, it's a loss, but it's way better than losing the full 10 grand they would have on a pure B-book. See, they've managed their risk. Okay, but what if Elsa's trade goes south? Let's say she loses $5,000. Well, that 50% of the trade that the broker kept in-house, that's now a direct profit of $2,500 for them. The other half that was hedged creates a loss for the broker with their liquidity provider, sure, but that loss is canceled out by Elsa's loss. And the final result here? The broker walks away with a nice little profit of $2,600. They didn't make the full 5 grand they could have with a 100% B-book strategy, but hey, they still made money and kept their risk under control. It's all about finding that middle ground.
All right, so that first strategy is all about reducing risk. But what if a broker thinks a client is actually, really good? That brings us to our second strategy, the overhedge. This is basically a way for the broker to jump on the bandwagon and profit with their client.
This is where that idea of client profiling really comes into play. If a broker spots a trader who seems to consistently make good calls, they might just decide to ride their coattails. How? They hedge more than 100% of the client's position, maybe 110%. In effect, they're placing their own bet in the exact same direction as their star client. So let's look at how this plays out. Elsa, who's been flagged as an informed trader, makes another winning trade for $10,000. The broker, wanting a piece of the action, had hedged her trade at 110%. This means their own position with their liquidity provider is actually 10% bigger than Elsa's. So what's the end result? The broker has to pay Elsa, her 10 grand, of course.
But their own, slightly larger trade made them $11,420. So after paying Elsa, the broker is left with a profit of 1,420 bucks. Think about that. They made money because their client made money. In this one instance, their interests were perfectly aligned.
But as you can imagine, this strategy has a very sharp downside. If the so-called informed trader gets it wrong this time and loses $10,000, the broker's overhedged position means their loss is even bigger. That 110% hedge just magnified their losses. It's a much riskier play for the broker, one that's banking entirely on their clients. And now we arrive at the last and, let's be real, the most controversial strategy of them all, the reverse hedge. If overhedging is betting with your client, this is, well, it's the exact opposite. This is what can happen when a broker profiles the client as being, shall we say, consistently unprofitable. Instead of just B-booking the trade and pocketing the loss, the broker decides to double down. They'll B-book the position and open an additional trade with their liquidity provider, effectively increasing their bet against their own client. This is the ultimate high-risk, high-reward move for a broker. And here is what it looks like when it goes spectacularly wrong. The broker has profiled Elsa as an unprofitable trader and placed this huge bet against her. But this time, Elsa wins. She pulls in a $10,000 profit. The result is an absolute disaster for the broker. First, they owe Elsa her 10 grand in winnings. And their extra reverse hedge bet with a liquidity provider also resulted in a massive loss. All told, their total loss here is a staggering $15,100. That is so much more than they would have lost with a simple B-book. They didn't just take the other side of the trade. They leveraged up that bet and lost big time. So, okay, after looking at all of these pretty complex behind-the-scenes games, you're probably asking yourself, what does any of this mean for me, the average retail trader, right? Why does any of this matter? Let's just boil it all down to the key takeaways. First, remember that C-book isn't a real thing. It's just a name for these hybrid risk strategies. Second, and this is the big one, your broker's interests are not always the same as yours. Your win can literally be their loss. This also means it's very likely that your trading patterns are being analyzed and profiled to decide how your trades get routed. Now, knowing this doesn't automatically make your broker the bad guy, but it absolutely makes you a smarter, more informed consumer. And all of this brings us to the final thought I really want to leave you with. Now that you know the different ways your trade can be handled, from your broker being a simple agent, to them betting alongside you, to them actively betting against you, it kind of begs a pretty big question, doesn't it? Do you really know what happens to your trades after you click that buy or sell button? Do you know which book you're in?